when I first started in commerce, I feel like I was going to conferences or reading things that were talking about how personalization is going to transform commerce and how consumers were demanding personalization. And if you didn't deliver it, no one's going to buy from you. But if we kind of strip away the noise and look at what, in practical terms, personalization is today, still
your first name at the top of the email.
Yeah, well, welcome, Oliver. It's still, it doesn't go much beyond that, right? E-commerce is ultimately retail, and retail needs to be profitable. Most e-commerce businesses, I think this is still true today. It's becoming less true because focus is shifting, but too many e-commerce businesses today are still unprofitable, right? You've got to get your unit economics right, and you've got to get them right from the start. Unit economics, profitability needs to be at the center of kind of anything.
Oliver and Jad, welcome to the show. Welcome to Below the Fold podcast. Super excited to have you guys here. This is yet another podcast on e-commerce. Never enough content, audible content, video content on e-commerce, what works, what doesn't work. How about a little intro? Let's start with Oliver.
Sure. Well, look, thanks for having me. I'm Oliver White. I suppose I'm looking at about 20-ish years now in commerce, predominantly in digital commerce, but also a little bit in the physical side of things. Started out, set up a commerce agency in the UK. Didn't actually know anything about e-commerce, but 20 years ago, no one else did either. And we just got lucky, right?
I'd say a lot of us don't know till now. So.
Yeah, but I didn't want to announce
that
to the world.
We're still learning.
Yeah. We're here for a reason.
I'm trying to pretend. And then we got lucky, right thing, right time, right place. We scaled that, and we would essentially design, build, run, and operate platforms on behalf of small to medium-sized kind of British retailers. Sold that, not for very much money, unfortunately. And then essentially went to work in private equity. So most of the roles I did in the UK kind of fell under the umbrella of private equity. I'd just get dropped in and essentially try and fix the digital side of the business or transform, I suppose, is the kind of modern vernacular, the online side of the business, whether that was strategy, tech, operational side of things. And then, been out here in the Middle East for about 10 years now. Spent a couple of years in Kuwait, helping Al Shire set up commerce across a handful of different brands. Came across to Dubai to work with Sephora and help set up and scale their commerce across the region. Did a bit of freelance here and there, and now, work with one of the big US advertising groups to help run their e-commerce practice.
Fantastic experience. And Jad, this is your third time on the show. I'm not sure if you need an intro, but I think
at this point it just feels like I'm parroting, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been in brick and mortar. I've started out my career out of college in department stores, worked for Galeries Lafayette, Berger Marais, and a lot of large format retails, also hypermarkets, supermarkets, Monoprix brands, and Géant Casino. I've helped set up their online channels as well, so I've done e-commerce. And I currently still work with large format. I do duty-free, duty-paid, department stores, luxury, for Shell Group as well now. So I know I have a foot in both worlds, so I know how much of a myth and how difficult it is for us to actually realize omnichannel, but we can have more of your take on that during this podcast. So I look forward to it.
cool. And Jad has prepared a list of questions to ask you.
And in our world today, AI does everything. So, but no, I don't want to dwell too much on questions. But I mean, tell us more about you said it yourself. You started out with brick and mortar, and then you bumped into commerce and e-commerce, and you started digitizing platforms for commerce on the web. How exactly does legacy meet digital? How do you transform? How do you transpose whatever this 100-year retail has been doing into a digital e-commerce that makes sense and is relevant?
Yeah, I think that the first barrier to break down, as it were, is that whole concept of physical and digital. I think we're finally getting to a point in time where the concept of online and offline have started to merge, right? This whole concept of omnichannel, which has been thrown around for years, but has never really kind of landed.
Yeah.
I think if you put yourself in the consumer's shoes now, I as a consumer, I don't identify as an online shopper or an offline shopper, right? I do the vast majority of my shopping online, but I still shop in stores. I still go to shops. So I think when you're working with, like, inverted commas, sort of legacy retailers, the first thing is that kind of cultural transformation to actually ensure that the business isn't thinking in terms of fixed channels. It's got to think in terms of consumer journeys. And most consumers will do a bit of both when it comes to purchase, right? They might start their journey online, they might visit a store, they might then purchase online or whatever. It's not a linear journey anymore, if it ever was. So I think the hardest part and the first thing to address is that kind of cultural, that perception that there's the stores and then there's the website or the app or whatever. It's the same thing, right? It's the same consumers that they interact with both platforms. So transforming that mindset within the organization, I think, comes first. There's always kind of the people challenge, right? The structural challenge. I think still today there isn't really a fixed model or a framework that brands or retailers use when it comes to commerce. Commerce sometimes sits as its own kind of vertical off to one side. Sometimes it sits under IT, sometimes it sits under merchandising, sometimes it sits under retail sales, exactly.
Yeah.
And everyone does something different. So I think finding the right organizational model or structure for the particular business is the second thing, right? And then you build out from there.
I think what's very relevant about what you said is that culture comes first, right? Like the transformation of the culture comes before the transformation of the company into digital assets, which is very interesting because the biggest friction points that we've seen, especially in large format stores or multi-branch stores, is the adoption of digital as another viable channel by the salespeople of the physical stores.
Exactly.
And it's very interesting to see that they depict it as a challenger and as competition, you know, where it was very difficult for us to start thinking about metrics and how we incentivize people in physical channel to actually adhere and push for digital adoption.
Exactly. I mean, especially in the luxury space, right? If you've got retail teams that are incentivized on sales performance, whether that's at an individual or store basis, getting them to recognize the value that the digital experience brings to them, and in trying to kind of recognize sales that finish online but that might have started in the store, and making sure that the people that were involved in that experience are recognized is kind of the key thing.
It was a journey, you know, throughout earlier in my career when we set up the first e-commerce in some of the previous companies I worked in, the top leadership would say, okay, but since e-commerce is doing most of the job, then we shouldn't incentivize the salesperson the same incentive as if they did the whole journey with the customer in store. Big no, you know, because if you do that, then what's the incentive for the salesperson to fulfill your order online if he's getting less money for it?
And you immediately create that friction, right?
Exactly.
It immediately becomes that us
You're the
versus
one
them.
that's creating it by saying, oh, they're not on par.
Exactly. Yeah.
So interesting. Okay. What about operational obsessions? You know, like when does e-commerce become over-engineered? When do you think too much becomes too much? Actually,
Pretty quickly, to be honest. Especially in this. This might not be a very fair thing to say, but especially in this part of the world, right? Because I think a lot of the big retail organizations here have perhaps not so much today, but certainly if you go back 2, 3, 4 plus years, a lot of the senior commerce leadership here, people like me, right? They're transplants. We're brought in from other markets, and you're typically paid a slightly inflated salary in this part of the world versus, say, Europe. So you have to prove your worth. So I feel a lot of the big retail organizations here engineer these really complex e-commerce operations architectures, and it's quite often because someone is trying to justify their salary, right?
Yeah.
And the average tenure, the average lifespan of a chief digital officer or chief commerce officer or whatever kind of label you want to give them is short here. It's kind of 18 months, 2 years. So that person moves out, someone else comes in, and you repeat the same cycle. All of a sudden, right? Well, I need to prove that I can make this better, and people never start with the basics. They always start with the right. We've got to replatform. All right, we need to introduce this, and you take on these big kind of initiatives that are underthought, underplanned, and it's almost like U.S. government. You bring in a president of the United States. They've got a 4-year tenure. They want to do all these big things, but you've only got 4 years, right? You can't necessarily, unless you get.
There's only
a
so
second
much
term.
you can do.
Exactly.
Actually, a good tenure would be for you to start the ball rolling for your successor to take over, right?
Exactly.
So, but nobody has this kind of thought process.
Yeah.
Especially in Dubai.
In practical terms, you mean investing, for example, in a piece of MarTech, a huge amount of money, but only ending up using 10% of it.
Exactly, and you see that all the time here. And I mean, you're seeing that now a little bit. I think potentially with like retail media. Retail media is like one of the kind of in favor topics at the moment within the commerce space. How can I monetize my on-platform audience, my first-party data? I can do that by selling advertising space or selling that data so that other companies can serve media on third-party platforms. But that's actually really complex, not necessarily from a tech perspective, but it's a big business change because all of a sudden you go from selling product to selling
Data.
media. So there's lots of layers between the tech and the actual kind of revenue that comes in from that, and it's not a golden ticket, right? It's not a guaranteed inflow of high margin revenue. You've got to sort of build that out. You've got to have a business that's ready to do that. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to the question.
Let us take it where it's taking us, right? That's what's interesting about it. It's that it's never clear cut.
Yeah.
It's never a small question with a small answer and direct straight point. And as you said, it's all trial and error. That's all we've been doing. And going into trial and error, which was the brand that taught you the harshest lesson, you would say, from your career so far?
I mean, there's been some pretty painful lessons all along the journey, to be honest, and different lessons all along the journey as well. I think going back to when I first started out in commerce, and we were sort of designing, building, and kind of operating sort of sites on behalf of brands, you would think you'd kind of cracked it. You would do something that made an impact, whether it was something that suddenly pushed up conversions, something that helped them pull down operating costs, and you think that's it, brilliant. We'll just roll that out across the other brands that we're working with, and
Cookie cutter.
Exactly. It would never
works in the kitchen.
Exactly. You would never see the results that you expected to see or hoped to see when you did the same.
Because different people, different cultures, different organizations,
Exactly.
structure, mentalities. I've had the same exact pain points. But it doesn't matter where it is, whether it's digital performance, operational, or in the stores. It really is very true, right?
Yeah.
There's no way you can take something and just adopt it across. Especially with people that have been like you in different countries, you kind of it's already difficult to get it inside the same city. Imagine if you're trying to do the same thing across countries.
Yeah, I always see people kind of promoting playbooks on commerce and stuff.
Yeah.
And sure, there's certain sort of concepts or ideas.
Methodology. The methodology
Exactly.
works, right? The research, the understanding.
In principle,
exactly. But
the empirical is always
Exactly.
you've got to do it on a case by case. So, I mean that was always a pretty painful lesson back at the time. I mean, I think I've always for the early part of my career I always underappreciated or undervalued the impact of, again, it's an overused word, but culture. Right? So I moved from the UK to Kuwait, and I was super conscious. I was super cognitive of the fact that I was going from London to Kuwait. Read loads of books about local culture, etc. How to behave in the.
Nothing prepares you, right? Nothing really prepares you for.
To be honest, I was massively over-prepared in that sense because I went to a company that was essentially European run. A lot of the senior management there were Brits actually. So it was pretty familiar to what I was used to. And then I went from Kuwait to Dubai to work with Sephora and didn't give a second thought to culture. I was like, I figured it all out now. I know everything. And it was a massive shock, right? Because it's a French-run company, but kind of with part local ownership. So and everyone in that organization is a mix of cultures, right? You don't have just English people. You don't have just French people. Everyone is kind of
Syrians, Lebanese,
or a mix. I was born here, but I grew up here.
French
and
speaking.
studied
I don't
here.
know from where.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So ways of doing things just completely change, and ways of getting things done, crucially, were just completely unfamiliar to me. So that was quite a painful learning experience. And yeah, there's been plenty of others along the way.
Okay, let's go technical.
Okay.
If
This is
there
where
was-
I'm exposed.
This is where everything comes out. If you were to eliminate like one very used dashboard metrics, you know, in e-commerce and how we track performance, which one would it be?
It's a difficult question because, I mean, we were chatting sort of off camera before, and
Don't say that to people.
but there's, I mean, there's no one metric that on its own really offers that much value. I think consumers are complex.
Yeah.
The journeys we go on to purchase are complex. How we buy, what devices we're buying on, what payment methods. There's so many variables along the journey to purchase that one metrics doesn't give you a view on that, right? In a lot of cases, 10 metrics don't give you a view. You've got to have the right balance of qualitative and quantitative and data and kind of human intuition, right? I think one of the most valuable things to people who work in commerce is being able to understand, like, consumer empathy, whatever you want to call it, but being able to understand, right, why is a consumer buying from me versus one of my competitors? What does a consumer want when they come and interact with me, whether that's in a physical store or on a website? Being able to understand that and then layer data over the top of that to get a better understanding of where you're right, where you're wrong, where you could be better, I think is the kind of nirvana, if you like. So to answer the question, one metric on its own, I mean,
Dashboard.
I mean, ROI is something I hate, right?
Okay.
It's just evaluating everything through the lens of ROI is kind of a trigger, I suppose, for me.
It makes it cold, impersonal, right?
Yeah, and it's very narrow.
So going to something that I completely agree with you, and that's very interesting, is that the first layer is to understand why the customer buys from us, whether it's digital or physical. How would you establish that? Like, what would you recommend for companies to understand the why?
I mean, fundamentally, you got to talk to consumers,
Okay.
right? Whatever form that might take it, whether that's kind of interviews or whether that's social listening or whatever. You've got to listen to what your consumers are saying, because everything ultimately stems from there. That's always a dangerous game, because how you ask people a question influences what answer you get back, right? So I think it's an underrated kind of area of commerce, to be able to actually properly speak to consumers without influencing what they're going to tell you back, and then turn that kind of anecdotal insight into something meaningful, I think is super important. You've got to understand your landscape, your competitive landscape. What are your competitors doing? What's working for them? Why is it working for them? You've got to understand kind of the broader kind of market landscape. So there's lots of information out there. I think it's just very difficult to actually dilute that, or distill that is probably a better word, into something that is actually actionable.
Okay, interesting. So what about the future of commerce, right? I mean, right now we're talking about hyper-personalization, you know, and AI and conversational commerce. And what's your take on all of this? What do you think are going to be, what are the false prophets in all of these, and what are, in your opinion, the trends that are going to stick to the next decade?
Sure. I mean, personalization is another trigger word for me. I think I might be being unfair, but for as long as I can remember back, when I first started in commerce, I feel like I was going to conferences or reading things that were talking about how personalization is going to transform commerce, and how consumers were demanding personalization, and if you didn't deliver it, no one's going to buy from you. But if we kind of strip away the noise and look at what, in practical terms, personalization is today, still...
Putting your first name at the top of the email.
Yeah, well, welcome, Oliver. It's still, it doesn't go much beyond that, right? I'm still logging in to, like, if you use fashion as an example, because it's quite relatable, I'm still logging in to that top fashion retailers and having to select men's clothing. I've never bought women's clothing. Maybe that's a phase I'll get to later in life, but for now, I don't shop women's clothing yet. Some of the best websites out there still by default offer me women's clothing. I have to select men. Like I buy the same 2 or 3 sizes every time. I shop the same 2 or 3 brands. My color palette is blue, black, and grey. I don't wear
consistent.
Yeah, exactly. I can't pull off bright colors. Like I'm not a trendsetter. I'm a pretty basic individual when it comes to what I wear. But every time I go onto one of these platforms, I have to apply all of these filters, and there is no personalization beyond people that bought this also bought this, or like you might like this.
Do you think it's coming, or do you think we're just
I think
repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again?
I think we might just completely leapfrog it. Like you ask about the future. I think the future is probably, and again, this I'm reluctant to use the word because it will become an overused word, but like agentic commerce, I think is.
I was just at a very interesting conference about agentic AI. So.
I don't know if you saw the Google developer conference the other day, but I mean, some of the capabilities that are now, they're not really the future. They're sort of now.
They are. They've been implemented. Orchestrators are real. So whether you like
they're not necessarily mass adoption yet, but the capabilities are there. I think as a consumer, that's super exciting. As someone who earns a salary from commerce, it's quite terrifying.
Yes, I can see why.
I'm not sure what value I will add to the
if
process.
AI can do everything that you do right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm opening an app, whether that's Google or ChatGPT or whatever, and I'm saying, listen, I want a blue long sleeve polo shirt in this material between this price range, available in this size.
Why are you bothering? You can take a picture, upload, and then
true.
You don't even need to go through the whole thing of describing it.
I'm showing my age. Yeah, exactly.
You could just probably save the image from online, just plug it in, and then
find me this. This is my price range. Find me the best deal. Find me something with whatever. And if it serves me back all the choices that I would normally spend quite a long time searching through Google for, and offers
and price comparing,
exactly. And I mean, it will know my address before long. It will save my card details before long, and it will just ask me like, "Do you want to buy this? I can have it shipped in 3 days," and I'll say yes.
Visa did launch actually an AI solution. Visa,
yes,
they launched an AI solution that will go and buy products for you.
Exactly. So
orchestrators are real. I mean, for people that are listening to us and don't know what orchestrators are, it's an AI, it's an AI, I would say, concert leader that is funneling through different agentic AIs that will do different jobs for it and then feed it back into it so that it would then continue processing until it finds you the best solution for the task at hand. Mm-hmm. So it's surreal in some sense. And I understand Oliver when he's saying, it's not a threat, because for me, it's an exhilarating process where you can clone yourself, because you can now have Oliver on 5 different jobs, doing the exact same things and being as competent because he knows how to prompt these AIs in order to do that.
Yeah.
And this is where, I think I speak quite enough about AI on LinkedIn myself, but there's a lot of other people, and I think it's completely true. AI will never replace people. It's people that know how to use AI that will replace people. Yeah. This is where the difference is.
Right. And back on the personalization point, and what are the blockers for personalization? So
don't trigger him.
So feel my blood. Right. My blood pressure rising.
So I wouldn't say it's a matter of capabilities or culture or people. I would say it's a tech challenge because of the lack of platforms speaking to each other. So a website may not know you because of consent, for example, because of the cookie becoming more and more useless. And so perhaps with AI, if you have a companion, you only talk to this companion, you've given this companion all the data about yourself, and it can absorb all this data, and now it can become super personalized. Would you say it's a tech issue then, a tech challenge?
I don't know. Like, the tech has been there for years. Good tech got commoditized in the commerce world. Good tech got commoditized years ago, right? It's not a wildly ambitious technical ambition. I think it comes from, and consent. I'm slightly on the fence with consent because consent was a big thing for a while, but it seems to be relaxing a little bit now. And I think as consumers, I think broadly speaking, people are pretty relaxed about consent. I give my consent for. I mean, I work in the industry. Yeah, I still give my consent for everything without a second thought, right? So I think that the data's there, the tech's there. I think it's still a failing of the willingness of retailers of brands, and there are. I suppose there are kind of business complications in the sense that if you're personalizing the assortment that your consumers see too much, if you're a retailer that sells multiple brands, you're going to get a bit of pushback from certain brands because they want their products to be visible the maximum amount of time. But yeah, I couldn't really give you an honest, clear answer to that. I don't know what the blockage is with personalization.
Yeah.
That's part of the frustration.
Yeah, but there is no doubt that we are moving towards a one-stop shop, perhaps, for e-commerce, rather than multiple touch points, right? Multiple apps for
Which
us
is
to
scary.
conduct our shopping.
I mean, it's scary from a business
Talking about
perspective.
marketing, like media, like
About
commercial
shopping,
media
about
for
commerce.
commerce itself.
Yeah, so shopping, instead of going through various websites and apps for you to buy from retailers, now with agentic AIs,
I don't agree.
You would
I would
go
not
and
agree
do
with
your
that.
shopping
I
from
think
one
there
place.
are people that will do that for sure.
Yeah.
And like the same way that today you have people on the spectrum, because like, let's think about it this way. Initially, we had people that would go to mono-brand stores and multi-brand stores. Then we had people that would go to multi-brand stores exclusively, mono-brand stores exclusively, or online exclusively, right? On the spectrum, we're talking. So there are people that might do all three. There might be people that would do 2 out of 3, and people that would just do one thing. Same thing. Agentic AI for me is a fourth channel now. So you're gonna have people that are still going to e-commerce because they like the experience of that specific channel. There are other people that will go to stores that because they like the specific store, and there are other people that would go to agentic AI because it just makes their life easier.
Yeah.
I don't think it's. I mean, the e-commerce is going to destroy brick and mortar thing that started in the early 2000s,
Never
right?
happened,
I mean,
yeah.
we're still here. Brick and mortar is still alive and well, still prolific, still opening stores like crazy. Every company. Some companies have problems, yes. Some e-commerces have problems as well. Tomorrow, some agentic AIs might have problems. So it's. I don't think anybody's going to replace anybody. I just think it's just going to layer on top of each other and create a seamless journey that is a hybrid for some, mono channel for others, and it's just going to continue that way.
Yeah. But I think that AI or these companions are bound for growth in the sense of
Sure,
the
for
experience that they can deliver to the end user. So right now, if you look at some of the leading AI interfaces, right, it's very text heavy, text centric. But sooner or later, who knows, they might be able to bring you the entire collection of a brand, with visuals and maybe perhaps a way for you to try them on the interface itself. And so these AI interfaces can one way or another become aggregators for these retail brands.
For sure.
And that will eat up a little bit from
We already
other
see it
apps.
today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of applications that are coming in, like AI personal shoppers,
Mm-hmm.
that would go out, and you're gonna have applications that are solely going to use AI for drop shipping. They're gonna be scrambling around the web, getting you products, recommending it for you. You're a street lifestyle guy. Okay, this is the shirt from Unas.
Mm-hmm.
This is the pants from Amazon. This is the, you know what I mean? And then you just click, okay, I want to buy all of 4, and then it will do everything for you.
Yeah.
Literally, it will use your card information, your data information, your personal, your name and everything, and just like 2 days later, you'll find all 4 boxes in front of your doorstep.
There isn't much data about it now, but people are talking and saying that AI is taking a little bit of Google search queries, right? And Google search is obviously a gate for websites, for brand websites and apps. And so with AI taking some of that search volume, some of those search volumes, what does that mean for brands?
I think it's interesting that because I think was it April, which is the first month in history that Google search volumes have ever dropped. But if you,
The big headline.
yeah,
Google's
exactly.
in trouble.
Exactly.
This year.
Yeah, just gone. Yeah. And obviously the press reaction to that is that's it. It's the end of search. Like, forget it. Everyone's selling their Google shares. But then if you watch the Google Developer Conference the other day, Google are just evolving their search product. So AI is now embedded within Google's search product, and you
can see it, right?
Exactly.
So when you use Chrome now, the first recommendation is an AI recommendation.
Exactly. And the virtual try-on feature that they're releasing in the US later this year is just embedded within search. So it will serve you back product recommendations in a kind of Google Shopping-esque style, and you'll be able to click a button that says virtual try-on, where you could just upload any old picture of yourself, and it will dispose the product image on you in a really sort of hyper-realistic way. So the search product will just evolve to be AI, which I think is what people miss. And I think, to your earlier point, I think where there's good potential here is when e-commerce came along. For years, everyone was like death of the high street, and especially British press is always desperately miserable and always kind of the end of the world is
The
coming.
US was a lot more dramatic. Like, it was Hollywood-esque, you know, that's
exactly.
it. Stores are gone.
Boarded up shops and apocalyptic kind of malls. But retail evolved. E-commerce forced retail
Agreed.
to evolve, right? You lost the brands.
Focus on experience, you know.
Exactly.
Actually give people a reason to come to your store that is not, I just want to buy a shirt.
And we lost the brands that were just rails of discounted clothing in stores because consumers demanded more from retail experiences. Correct. And I think we're probably at a point in time. I'm guilty of this. I think a lot of people that work in commerce are guilty of this, of talking about how commerce moves so quickly. Like we create this idea that we're at the very forefront of retail and we're carving a path for everyone else. And if you're not working in commerce, you're left behind. But it's nonsense, really, because commerce hasn't evolved that much over the last, say, 10 years, right? You have a couple of inflection points where all of a sudden things change, like iPhone comes along. It's all about responsive design, mobile first, apps, etc. So you have these kind of big inflection points, but websites still broadly look the same as they did, say, 10 years ago. I still look back at retailers I worked for 10 years ago, and the website's pretty much the same as the one I put in at the time. I think with like agentic commerce and AI, I think it's going to force people who sell online to step up, right? Because consumers are going to demand, I'll come to your D2C platform and I'll shop with you.
It's going to elevate every experience
Yes.
of the previous channels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it lifts the whole kind of retail shopping experience up for everyone.
So as we can all see, we could stay here for hours, but unfortunately we're limited in time. So we're going to step into the next part of it. Teams, how do you grow them? How do you recruit? What's your like 2-3 tricks or advice that you could give people? Because searching for the right e-commerce leadership roles are always, a pain point.
Yeah.
So, and we were discussing it initially, right? So tell us, how do you do it?
It's not a very nice term, but I always focus on, I think soft skills, which I hate that term, but I can't think of a better one, are becoming more important than ever, right? Fundamentally, I don't think e-commerce is that complex. It's selling stuff to people who buy stuff, right? At its very core. So sure, there are specialisms within that. You need people who understand data, you need people who understand UX, you need developers, you need architects, etc. All along that process. But at its core, you're someone who wants to sell something to someone else. So I always think, or at least what I always look for is people who can empathize with the consumer. People can understand. So
empathy would be the one trait you think that is one of the most important
with the consumer, and people who are good to work with. I think that's an underrated quality, right? You can teach skills. People can learn new things quite easily, but you want people who understand the consumer and who are ultimately good to work with, right?
Yeah.
How do you search for empathy? I mean, how do you probe for it, right? Because it's a tough quality to measure, especially in a few interviews.
Yeah, a good question. I think when I tend to interview, I tend not to focus on the technical skills, partly because I don't know if I'm always qualified to be the one to evaluate someone's technical capabilities. But I'll ask them, where do you shop? How do you shop? And I'll just get them to talk about what they buy and how they buy, and try and relate that to to the role that I'm speaking to them about, right? And how do you think that has an implication here?
I think also ask them, if they've been in a tough situation and how they've dealt with it, right? And just like probe and see if they did it with empathy.
Best experiences
or,
then.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Cool. Last 5 minutes, I guess. more
Yeah,
or
I
less.
mean, we have a bit of time for a couple more questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I really want to dig into Oliver Unfiltered, right? So I'd like to know more about the person sitting across me at the table. So, if okay, so I see you're active on LinkedIn. If you had to, let's say we erase your profile and you had to start from scratch and you had to describe yourself in one sentence, what it would be?
That's, I mean, I'm so dependent on AI now to write for me that I don't think I could give
I
you
think we all are.
intelligent sentence
Aren't we all?
off
Aren't we
the
all?
cuff.
I think we're all.
I'm not. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of Donald Trump-esque quality where I can just.
We can ask AI now what he would write about you in one sentence.
Yeah, I mean, given my search history on ChatGPT, I'm not sure I'd like to share that with anyone. I think look, LinkedIn has changed so much over the last, I guess, post-COVID, I suppose, like everything
Everybody's
else.
excited, exhilarated, and happy to be there, right?
Yeah, everything's game changing. That's another trigger word.
Happy to be here. I like this.
Yeah, I think I used to love LinkedIn. It used to be such a valuable tool. You used to get so much good quality information there. Now, I guess like all social channels, it's sifting through the noise. It's sifting through the people that are there because just clout chasing versus people
This
that
is where
are there.
it's more important than ever for you to engage and actually tell
Yeah.
the algorithm what you like, what you want to see, right? So
I think my approach to LinkedIn now is keep it concise, right? Don't try and over explain. Don't try and kind of over engineer what you're trying to say. Just keep it concise. Keep it to the point.
Be helpful.
Yeah,
I
offer
think-
value. Yeah.
I think this would be something I would be interested in on LinkedIn.
So the concise one sentence.
I actually did this. I shouldn't say this because it'll sound like I'm looking for a new job. I'm not. But I actually did this the other day.
Don't please, whoever's listening to me from.
Yeah, I actually did this the other day. So I think, and I used AI for it. So I think it says leading lean digital teams and large e-commerce P&Ls.
I like
Hollis.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Straight to the point, simple.
Yeah,
Leading lean digital teams. It has a nice ring to it as well.
yeah, a little bit
Okay,
of
awesome.
alliteration.
Well done, AI.
It's all about the prompt.
And what's the one hill you will still be willing to die on, no matter how unpopular it is in a boardroom?
I mean, this tends to be, I would say, quite popular in the boardroom, but difficult to execute beyond it. For me, e-commerce is ultimately retail, and retail needs to be profitable. So, for me, anything that I'm doing for a business, I want that to contribute towards bottom line, not top line, but bottom line. Most e-commerce businesses, I think this is still true today. It's becoming less true because focus is shifting, but too many e-commerce businesses today are still unprofitable, right? They're still a net cost.
The
to
old
business.
Amazon model, right? It's a bit because of what Jeff Bezos built in the early 2000s, growing the company tenfold year over year. And everybody still has this ideology that, in order to grow, you need to focus on the top line and forget about the bottom line. But then,
Amazon retail is still unprofitable as globally, right? I think in North America, it's Amazon retail as a standalone is profitable, but globally,
but the strategy of Amazon is astonishing in the sense where it created parallel businesses that are hyper profitable.
Exactly.
Like AWS, for example, by itself.
Yeah.
And allowing Amazon retail to continue being growth focused.
But that's a relatively unique model that most retailers can't adopt, right? You're not. If you're a traditional inverted commerce retailer, you're not adopting commerce to build out a parallel revenue stream, right? You're adopting commerce to protect your core business and to grow your
That's
core
your main
business.
focus and your main money maker. You better make sure it is money making. Right?
Exactly. You've got to get your unit economics right, and you've got to get them right from the start. So I think to answer the question, the hill I'll die on is that unit economics, profitability needs to be at the center of kind of anything.
Completely agree.
Cool.
You want to go freestyle?
Good stuff. Freestyle. we could do freestyle. I have 2 questions for you, Oliver.
Sure.
The first one is, if we were to cover another, if we were to plan another episode on e-commerce, what would be 1, 2, or 3 topics that you think we should cover?
A good question. I think it's not kind of the sexy part of commerce, but I think the how businesses incorporate e-commerce into their business, into their structure, I think is kind of under discussed.
Yeah.
And we touched on it right at the beginning, but where does e-commerce sit? What does an e-commerce organizational structure look like? You know, what roles, what specialities, what functionalities? I think that's quite an interesting topic because I still, as I said before, I still don't think there's there'll never be a one size fits all framework or model, right? But I don't even think there's kind of 4 or 5 broadly accepted sort of versions of what good looks like there. So I think that's can be quite an interesting topic. I think, I mean, we've touched on it today, but the future of e-commerce it's often over discussed because the pace of change, I think, has stalled a little bit in recent years. But I think we're probably now approaching another big inflection point.
Pace of change has stalled?
Up until the last couple of years.
Okay.
So I think if we're talking today,
I see what you mean.
we're talking today, all of a sudden with AI and some of the things we've talked about today, there is now like an acceleration, but I think that's why we almost, as an industry, need to revisit what the future of e-commerce looks like, because I've been saying the same thing. Most people have been saying the same thing for quite some time, and now I think we've got sort of tangible visibility of what some of the developments look like. I think there's now is where we start thinking about, right, what does that next big leap look like?
Yeah.
And I think that's quite interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
I think there's this sentence that a friend of mine said at a panel a couple of days ago. I keep on repeating it, but I loved it so much that it summarizes what you just said. Evolution or technology was intergenerational up to AI, and today we're intra-generational. So the leaps are happening within our generations, and they're not passing from one generation to the other.
I like that. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've been stealing. I've been repeating it ever since he said it.
You'll gradually stop saying that you got it from somewhere else, and it'll become yours. Yeah.
Your friend just missed his chance to be on the show.
I think I'm going to repeat it so much that everybody's going to say I said it.
Yeah. That's the way to do it.
But honestly, it really struck home for me.
The other question I had for you is, are you a podcast listener? And what are your favorite shows? Yeah,
I've got an unhealthy taste in podcasts, to be honest. I listen to podcasts like a middle-aged divorced woman will listen to podcasts. So quite
best
no
recipes for
offense
chili
to
con
middle-aged
carne.
divorced women. Quite a lot of true crime.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay,
nice.
There's there's a series, right, on I can't remember, where a crime in. They live in a building. They listen to a podcast about.
Oh yeah, Only Murders in the Building.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's good that. Yeah, I watched that. New series coming soon. So a lot of true crime. Anything with lots of sport podcasts. I've almost stopped watching sport now. I just consume sport through the medium of podcast. Which kind of defeats the whole purpose of sport.
Kind of. Right.
An eclectic mix. Yeah, I like the weird stuff.
Okay. Cool, good stuff. Well, we hope that you become also a fan of the show.
I should have stressed. I have listened to Below the Fold. Yes.
All right.
And watched it. Yeah. So,
okay.
I'm a fan.
Fantastic. Good to know. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, Jad. Thank you for
awesome. Thanks
being
for
part
having
of
me.
this. Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Thank
Oliver, was a really, really very engaging conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Good talking with you both.
Thank you.